I started my first business way back in 2012, 2013. And at the time I was doing something called app reskinning. Now, if you don't know what that is, basically it's taking a piece of code or an app code base for a mobile app, changing out the graphics, you could call that adding a new theme or a skin, and then publishing that as a brand new app. So it's the same game or the same app, just has new graphics to make it look like something different. And you'll find out why I say business in air quotes soon, but I'll give you the quick version of this story, which was a pretty wild ride at the time. So I found out about reskinning. I think it was either through a blog post or a Reddit thread the first time, and ended up going down this rabbit hole reading about all these people doing really, really well with this particular business model. And so I bought a couple of courses on it, I joined a mastermind, and at this time I was working a full-time job, so this was just on the side, and I ended up cranking out a bunch of apps for the iOS App Store. Now, back in 2012, 2013, it was very different. It was still relatively new compared to what it is in current day. And basically the idea was you would publish all of these apps to the App Store. At the time, the App Store would give preference in terms of recommendations and search results and things like that to new apps. So you'd publish a brand new app, it would get a bunch of exposure on the App Store for the first few days, and in that time you would have ads in the apps, and so those ads would generate revenue. But the problem was you only get the exposure for the first few days and then it would die off, and so you had to keep continually creating and publishing new apps, otherwise the revenue stopped. But after a little while, it was actually doing okay. It was making a few $100s per day just in ad revenue from these crappy little mobile apps. So, that kept going for a little while, but then I started experiencing challenges. For a start, Apple obviously didn't like this practice because people were essentially spamming the App Store, and more people were cottoning on to this and starting to do it. And so they started to reduce the amount of exposure that new apps got. They started to improve their algorithm, and they started to make all of these little changes to make it more and more difficult for people who were doing this. Couple that with the fact that, as I said, more and more people were doing it, which meant there was more and more competition in the space. There were more and more apps in general, which meant that each new app got less downloads than the previous ones. And so eventually, as you probably imagine, kind of just wound down and got to the point where this was no longer feasible. But all told, from when I started to when I finished and it all wound down was probably almost 2 years. And looking back, I look at that now and I think, it was always doomed to fail. That was never going to be a long-term successful business. And while hindsight's a beautiful thing, I wish I could get those 2 years back to do something more meaningful with that time, because I started at zero, I built something up over 2 years, but then after that 2-year period, I was back to zero and starting from scratch again. And the reason, as you probably guessed from the air quotes, is because it was never a real business. It was an opportunity. It was a short-term opportunity that I jumped on based on, reading all of these stories about other people doing well with this particular model, but it was only ever destined to be short-term. It only existed because of a flaw in the algorithm within the iOS App Store, because it was new at the time, and because we were creating something that Apple didn't like. They were always going to close that loophole. The market was always going to correct itself, and it was always going to come to an end. And if I could go back and tell myself at the beginning of that 2-year period, hey, you know what? This is not going to last. You'll see some success, you'll make some money, it will feel good for a little while, but after 2 years, it's all going to be wound up and you'll be starting something new, then I would never start it in the first place. Despite making money along the way, I wasn't adding any value to anybody. I wasn't building anything of use. And at the end of the day, it was extremely unfulfilling. It was boring. Cranking out endless apps for the iOS App Store that aren't actually any good gets really, really boring. And the people who were making the big money, the most money out of everyone else, weren't the people like me who were cranking out apps. It was the people who were selling the shovels to us, the gold miners, meaning the people who were selling us the app codes. So you would buy an app code base to reskin. So the people selling those for hundreds of dollars a piece and licensing them to us, they were making big amounts of money. The people selling courses, they were making a ton of money because they were essentially, as the saying goes, selling the shovels to the gold miners, and we were the gold miners. And the reason I'm telling you all of this is because as we go into 2023 and I look around on YouTube and TikTok and Instagram, I still see all of these new business opportunities out there That are the exact same thing. They're not called app reskinning. They're not the exact same business opportunity. But when you peel it back, they're essentially the same thing. They're short-term opportunities that in a very short period of time, 1 year, 2 years, or maybe even already, they are destined to stop working. They are destined to fail. And so I don't want you to waste the next 1, 2, 3, 4 years of your life trying to work on one of these business models that are never, ever going to be long-term successful for you. So let's talk about the most popular business opportunities that I'm seeing out there right now that you should avoid in 2023. I'll go through the list, explain why they're a bad idea and what the flaws are within these different models. And then more importantly, I think I'll teach you how to spot these poor business opportunities, these ideas that you should avoid. Because while I'm going to give you ones that are current now that you should avoid, new ones are guaranteed to pop up. And it's important that you know how to spot those and avoid them completely. Okay, so the first one to talk about is YouTube automation. So this is so similar to app reskinning, it's not funny. This is basically a practice where you churn out a bunch of low quality videos for YouTube at volume in order to generate revenue from AdSense. So often what they'll do is they'll do things like go to Fiverr, pay somebody to write a script, and then they'll either use a software tool to automatically read out the script and they'll put some stock video over the top of that and publish it as a video on YouTube. Or some of them are even going out and getting stock video from a stock video site, licensing that, licensing some stock audio, putting the two together as like a 1, 2, 3 hour video. Often they're like music for study or music for background noise or white noise and things like that. Publishing them on YouTube, putting ads all through them, and then generating revenue from that. And the reason it's not going to work long term is the exact same reasons app reskinning didn't work. YouTube don't like it because they don't want low quality content on their platform. And even if you are getting some exposure with that now, eventually they're going to figure out ways to make sure that that low quality content doesn't bubble to the surface, meaning that while it works now, over time, it's eventually going to peter out and die off. And as with all of these opportunities, what happens is as more and more people find out about them and get suckered into paying $1,000, $2,000, $3,000 for a course on how to do it, and then they start doing the same thing, you get more and more competition. The market gets flooded with all of these different low quality videos, all doing the exact same thing. And then each of them get fewer and fewer views as well. And so the competition just kind of drown each other out as well. You're going into a red ocean. You're not actually doing anything with any kind of barrier to entry. And if there's no barrier to entry, while the people selling the courses will tell you this is a good thing, hey, you don't need any skills, you don't need any money to get started, you don't even need any tech knowledge, this is a great opportunity for all of these reasons, it's actually a bad opportunity for those reasons, because it means anyone else can do it. If anyone can do this, then it means there is no moat. There is nothing stopping hundreds, thousands of other people jumping in and becoming your competition, and eventually you all just drown each other out. Now the next one, I can't believe I still have to say this in 2023, but if you're thinking about dropshipping, please don't. And yes, I know there's still people out there who are showing things on TikTok and YouTube and stuff like that, showing how much money they're making with dropshipping and how it's still a great opportunity and it's not dead. But honestly, 99.9% of people who try this are going to fail. It was an opportunity that some people made a lot of money from a few years ago, but in 2022 and going into 2023, the chances of success are so slim it's not funny. A few years ago, ad costs were much lower. The market sophistication wasn't there, meaning the people you were selling to didn't know that they could just go on AliExpress and buy the exact same product with the exact same shipping times for a quarter of the price. But now people have cottoned onto that. People can spot dropshippers from a mile away and they avoid them. Rightly so. And yes, I know the term dropshipping technically means a business that just ships from the manufacturer or the supplier direct to the customer versus holding inventory. And so yes, there's dropshippers who ship from the US and all that kind of stuff. I'm mainly referring here to the whole, shipping from China thing that's like super quick and easy to get started with. But even the models where they dropship from the US, it's the same thing. You're selling generic products that anyone else can buy and sell to a consumer in a few clicks, and the consumer can go on and just buy it themselves from those places for a quarter of the price anyway. You have no moat, you have no competitive advantage, and again, it's a bad business model for so many reasons, as I've mentioned. Chances are you'll spend ages trying to find a winning product, as they call it. Just the term winning product sounds like something a gambler would say. It's such a gambler mentality. Like, I've got to find a winner. You're going to spend ages doing that. You're going to start running Facebook ads. You're not going to be profitable. You're probably going to go then and try and find another product and mess around setting that up on your slap together Shopify store. You're going to try doing that again and again ad nauseum and never make any money with it. So avoid dropshipping in 2023. You might be surprised to hear me mention this next one, and it's a social media marketing agency, or SMMA. I just don't like the term SMMA because that seems to be the way all of these people selling courses on how to get rich quick with a social media marketing agency describe it. I didn't know of the term SMMA. So I ran an agency for 7 or 8 years, did really well with that. It was a great agency. We had really happy clients. We had a great reputation, but I didn't even know about the term SMMA until a couple of years ago when these videos were popping up on like how to make $10,000 a month with SMMA. I was like, what's that? I just call mine a Facebook and Instagram advertising agency. Turns out that's the term. I can't stand it for that reason. Anyway, I digress. Let's move on. While I think agencies are a good business model, they're great. Like I said, I had a really successful agency. But the reason I recommend that you shouldn't start one in 2023 is because starting an agency isn't as easy as a lot of people will tell you out there. Okay, the people that are trying to tell you that it's a great business opportunity, just buy my course, this is how you get your first client, etc., etc. To start a successful agency, you need to be highly skilled. You need to be very good at running ads on whatever platform you're selling. Meaning, if you're running Facebook ads or TikTok ads or whatever is the hot thing at the moment for clients, you need to be extremely good at it. That means you need to be extremely good at coming up with marketing strategy, designing effective marketing strategy. You need to be good at coming up with effective creatives. You need to be a great copywriter. Then you need to know how to market your agency itself. How are you actually going to get clients? The problem with a lot of these people promoting social media marketing agencies as a great business opportunity for people with no experience and all of that stuff is that the thing they focus on teaching is how to land clients. They're teaching how to get your first client, how to get your first 5 clients. But what they're not focused on is actually delivering a great service to those clients. So people are coming in with no experience, they're learning how to get their first client, and often it's with not so honest practices, learning how to get that client, and then the client signs on, gives them a few $1,000s, and after 1, 2, 3 months at best, the clients are extremely unhappy because the results aren't being delivered and they leave. And so what happens is after a few months, everything crumbles, falls apart, and that person is back to square one because they didn't have the fundamentals. They didn't have the skills required to build a great social media marketing agency. So if you have no experience with online advertising, then yeah, stay away from this business model in 2023. If you want to do it, as I said, it's a great business model, but go work at an agency first, get some experience, learn all of the different skills needed, get very, very good at it, as in become one of the best people out there for a specific platform, Facebook, TikTok, whatever that may be, and then branch out and go out and set up your own agency when the time comes. But it's not something you can just set up, get up and running with and start making $10,000, $20,000, $30,000 a month like some people might try and tell you. Another one that I still see out there is drop servicing. So drop servicing is very similar to drop shipping, but instead of taking an order and then outsourcing the delivery of a product to the customer, with drop servicing, you're advertising a service. When somebody purchases that service, they essentially go to somewhere like Fiverr, purchase that service and use the Fiverr vendor to deliver that service, and then they go and then hand it to the client. So the client never knows that this person is simply outsourcing to Fiverr, but that's what's really going on in the background. And this doesn't work for the same reasons I've mentioned previously. There's zero barrier to entry, which means it just gets more and more flooded with competitors to the point where it's no longer profitable. So the only way you make money with this business model is on the margin between what you're paying the Fiverr gig person for the service and what the customer is paying you. Let's say a customer comes and pays you $100, you pay the Fiverr person $70, you keep the $30 margin. Now, as more and more competitors come in, because there is no barrier to entry, there is no moat, there is nothing that makes you special, the only way you can compete with one another is on price. So then you might have to say, well, I need to charge $90 now because the person over there is charging $95 for the same service. I need to charge $90. Your margins compress. Then you get more competition and you realize, well, nobody's buying from me because I've got all these competitors who are now charging $85. I need to charge $80, etc., etc., right down until the margins for everybody are squeezed so tight that it just doesn't work anymore. Not to mention the fact that this only works due to a lack of market sophistication in the first place, meaning this is only working because the clients that you're bringing on, the clients that you're finding, don't know that they can go to Fiverr and get the exact same work done for 30% less, for 50% less, whatever the price is. As market sophistication increases, meaning as your target market realizes that there are better ways to get this exact same service, meaning cheaper ways to get the exact same thing done, then they're not going to come back to you. And the last thing I'll say is often what's actually being delivered isn't great. It's being outsourced to the lowest cost provider on Fiverr because these people want to have the biggest margins possible. Therefore, they want to find the cheapest Fiverr providers to provide this service. And that means often the quality isn't great. So you go and find customers. And instead of having happy customers who come back again and again and again, often they're not happy with what gets delivered because the quality is so poor. And then they never come back. And so you're constantly out there fighting this battle to find new customers over and over and over again. Whereas a real business, once they get customers, they have repeat customers coming back because they're so satisfied with the product or service that's being delivered. And that's what's missing here. So these are just a few examples, but there are tons of business opportunities like this popping up all the time. And the reason they're able to exist is always the same. And it's because for one reason or another, there is an anomaly in the market. Usually that's created by new technology, and these business models simply would not be viable if that market anomaly didn't exist. Now, often these anomalies are created by new technology entering the market or access to something new. For example, like on Fiverr, you can access overseas labor. But there is one thing I can tell you about markets, and it's when an anomaly like this exists, the market always corrects itself. The anomaly never lasts for an extended period of time. That means that whatever anomaly allows for these new business models to pop up and exist will disappear, and the door will slam shut in a relatively short period of time. And usually, by the time a bunch of people have started talking about it and started creating courses around it, that window is already closing, if not already slammed shut. To give you an example of what I mean by these market anomalies, I'll start with dropshipping. The reason dropshipping was viable when it first started was because we had AliExpress, which was relatively new. So this provided this new way to get really cheap products created and shipped from China to anywhere in the world. That wasn't available previously. Yes, you could always buy products from China, but being able to simply go on, find these cheap products and have them delivered to anywhere in small quantity with a few clicks wasn't available. So this created a market anomaly. So the sudden availability of this new service was one piece of this market anomaly. The other piece that coupled perfectly to enable dropshipping to work so well was the emergence of the biggest change, the biggest revolution in advertising that we've seen in hundreds of years. And that was the advent of Facebook ads. Facebook ads allowed for this extremely low cost direct response marketing and the ability to acquire customers at prices lower than anything we'd seen before. The effectiveness of Facebook ads in the early days was absolutely crazy and unlike any other advertising medium we'd seen. And so those two things combined created this anomaly in the market, and that allowed for this dropshipping opportunity to exist. But eventually, everyone figures out you can buy cheap products on AliExpress. So lots of people start doing that exact same thing. Competition begins to increase, and that means it gets harder and harder to find these products that you're able to buy and sell at a very low cost via AliExpress. Coupled with the fact that everyone cottons on to the fact that Facebook ads are the best way to advertise your business, and everyone starts jumping on board, which means demand for the ads on the platform goes up, which means the cost of advertising on Facebook ads goes up, and that again squeezes the margin for dropshippers. Eventually, the market corrects itself. So eventually we get to a point where ads are now much more expensive. People are much more aware of AliExpress. There's a lot more competition with all these people coming in and dropshipping. Plus, consumers are more aware of what's going on, so they know to avoid dropshippers because they don't want to buy crappy products with a 30-day shipping time, and they know they can just go to AliExpress if that's what they want anyway. And so then the market corrects itself, the doors close on that opportunity, and it's all over. We can apply the same thinking to SMMA. I hate that term. Anyway, social media marketing agencies. back when Facebook ads were just getting rolling, let's say it was 2012, 2013 was kind of the golden age of Facebook ads, for example. Every business was hearing about Facebook ads and they all wanted to get on board. So when people are starting these agencies, they could have very little experience. They would go out, pitch businesses with these cold emails and cold messages, and businesses were hearing everywhere how good Facebook ads were. So it was very easy to sell those businesses into Facebook advertising, Instagram advertising services. So that's the first part. It was much easier for people with no experience, no reputation, no brand behind them to get businesses to sign on as clients for an agency. Coupled with the fact that, as I said, ads were so cheap back then, you didn't really need to be that good to actually deliver a good result to a business. You could kind of stumble your way through and figure it out because ads were just so cheap. Even if you weren't good, you could still get a reasonable result for your clients. So again, that was a market anomaly. Eventually, over time, lots of businesses get burned by these people popping up and saying they're Facebook advertising experts and starting up these agencies. So businesses become more wary. It's harder to land clients. Plus, as I said, ad costs have consistently risen over time as competition increases on the platform, and that opportunity eventually disappears to the point where I said now it's not worth starting a social media marketing agency in 2023 if you've got zero experience, zero reputation, and zero starting capital. So the telltale signs to look for if you're thinking about starting a business in 2023 are these. If it's something where they say you need no skills, no experience, low upfront startup costs, and it promises big returns in a short period of time, run. Those are all massive red flags. In addition to that, ask yourself these few simple questions. Why does this opportunity exist now if it didn't a few years ago? So I gave you those examples with like drop shipping and social media marketing agencies. They all existed because something had changed that allowed them to suddenly exist. So think about this opportunity that you're looking at. Why does it exist now? There could be a valid reason, but just make sure it's not one of these short-term opportunities that only exist because of a strange market anomaly. Second, ask yourself, how does this add value to the consumer? So the businesses that I mentioned to you, like drop shipping, like app reskinning, for example, they add no value to the consumer. There is no benefit to the consumer from using your service or buying from you versus buying from somebody else or downloading a different app or whatever. For example, drop shipping. By coming to you, there is no benefit to the end consumer. They could go to AliExpress, buy that same product for a quarter of the price and have it delivered in the exact same time with the exact same level of customer service. Zero benefit. So if you're looking at opportunity and there is absolutely no benefit from what you are doing to the end customer and consumer, that's a red flag as well. And the other thing I think is really important to ask yourself is, would you feel fulfilled by doing this for the next 10, 15, 20 years? If you look at the examples that we talked about, like YouTube automation and things like that, none of these over the long term are very fulfilling. It's a boring grind. And because you're not adding any value, because you don't have happy customers and clients and things like that, it's not going to be fulfilling. So whatever you're thinking about doing, just step back and think, could I do this for 5, 10, 15 years and feel fulfilled and happy doing it? And if not, I think you should reconsider. The way to build a successful business is by creating or doing something that adds value for your customers or clients, and doing it well, or creating something that is really, really good and doing that over and over for a long period of time. It's a result of consistent hard work, but that's how you build a long-term business that grows over time rather than this short spike and then drops off when the opportunity disappears. I'll leave you with this. The cost of your time can't be overstated. If I took those years I spent building crappy mobile apps and instead spent them building a long-term business, I would have been in a much better position at the end of those 2 years than I was. I would have had something that was still growing and in the early stages, rather than having something that was clearly in a state of terminal decline and now needing to think about, okay, what's the real business that I'm going to start next? I could have been 2 years ahead instead of starting from scratch. So hopefully this business helps you think about things next time you see that YouTube video with the fancy thumbnail pops up talking about passive income or the best business ideas to start in 2023. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.